This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is something I wish we actually saw more of these days. This is the new Lenovo IdeaPad 730S. So why do I say that? Because it starts at $739. It's got a lovely aluminum casing in your choice of iron gray or iron gray, but it's super thin. It's 11.9 millimeters, and it's very light as well. And it's just a standard laptop. So these days, if you want something that's light, classy, kind of nice looking, right? You got to spend a lot of money because it gets bundled with a lot of other features that some of you don't want. Like some of you don't want touchscreens, and you don't want 360-degree hinges, which is what Lenovo is doing the most of these days, and a lot of other manufacturers too. You get the idea what I'm talking about. Dedicated graphics. If you don't need dedicated graphics, this is just a solid, classy, super thin and light, business-ready, consumer-ready laptop. The only thing that I don't like, and in the United States and in Canada, this is called the IdeaPad, like I said, 730S, which is normal. IdeaPads have always been Lenovo's consumer laptop line. But in the EU, they call it the Yoga 730S. So how confusing is that? Because it doesn't yoga. This does not have 360-degree hinges. So for you folks in the EU who happen to be watching this and you know it under that name, this is it right here. So what Lenovo's doing is S means standard laptop, C means convertible in the overseas lingo and all that sort of confusing stuff. We're going to look at it now. So the base configuration for $739 gets you a Core i5, and this is Intel 8th generation Whiskey Lake, so the latest and greatest that's available. 8 gigs of DDR3 low power RAM and 128 gig NVMe SSD. That's a pretty tiny SSD, grant you. You can go up to a 256 gig, and it adds like $50 or $60 to the price, but that's as high as Lenovo offers it. You can open this, and we'll cover that later, and upgrade the SSD to a higher capacity if you want later. And also, if you want to max this thing out and go for a Core i7 with 16 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig SSD, that one's going to hit you for about $979. So this puts it in the sub $1,000, obviously well under $1,000 if you're going for a lower end configuration, which is pretty darn attractive. Price-wise, it would compete with the Dell Inspiron, but the Dell Inspirons tend to be thicker and heavier, built a little bit more tanky, and certainly it's a direct competitor for the HP Envy 13, which has been a very popular line for HP. Now at the Envy line, HP does offer more higher end configurations if you want more storage, if you want to go with a touchscreen or a higher resolution display. So there's a difference if you're looking for something like this, but higher end. Of course, the Envy weighs 2.71 pounds, and this is only 2.43 pounds, making this one of the lightest 13.3-inch Ultrabooks on the market. And this one's about 3 millimeters thinner, too, at 11.9 millimeters, also one of the thinnest laptops. Despite the fact that it's very thin, it has an aluminum casing that's pretty rigid, and it doesn't have a whole lot of flex in it. So sometimes when things get this thin and this light, you start to worry about it feeling like you're folding aluminum foil or something like that. Certainly not the case. It inspires confidence. One challenge when you go this thin and this light is that there's no room for legacy ports, which means like HDMI, a full-size USB-A port. Instead, you get USB-C ports. There are 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on the right side, and there's a USB-C port on the other side as well, and that one is a Gen 1, so not the super fast one. This charges via USB-C, so your charger will take up one of those ports. You do have a headphone jack, of course, thank goodness for that. Lenovo's been doing pretty good things with speakers for a while now, and they have Dolby Atmos this time as the branding for the audio for the stereo speakers. These are fairly large down-firing drivers, and it's pretty loud and full for a 13-inch thin and light laptop. It sounds pretty good. You can fill a room with sound. The display on this is really nice looking. I was surprised. Given the price point, I figured I was going to boot this thing up and go, eh. But no, it's actually quite good. You got 100% of sRGB coverage on this, and good color gamut overall, and pretty good color accuracy. In fact, the gamma is good on it, the white point's good on it. It's all nice stuff. So if you're a budding photo or video editor and you care about your color accuracy, it's certainly great for content production for the web, where sRGB is the standard. Nice stuff. It's glossy, but as displays go, it's not super duper overly glary. And as you can see, the bezels on this are pretty small, which is the trendy thing these days, so yay that. My only complaint for me, I do like touchscreens, especially on smaller laptops. And my first reaction is to reach out and start touching that screen, but not going to happen. You get full HD as your only resolution options, IPS, and there is no touch here. Likewise, there's no pen option either. Again, this is a no frills in terms of features kind of laptop computer. Now, given the fact that it is this thin and this light, Lenovo had to do something to ensure that the cooling was pretty good because, like I said, you have Intel 8th generation Whiskey Lake CPUs on here, and that's a quad-core 15-watt CPU with Intel UHD 620 integrated graphics. So, what did they do? You can see on the internals, we're going to cover that in just a moment. They've got a very large heatsink going on here, a pretty large fan, and they're actually venting through the keyboard, so they're doing air intake through the keyboard. They're not the only ones that have ever done that, but it does help with airflow. If you push it hard, you will hear it, but it's still a small Ultrabook with a thin fan, so it's going to be more like a sound than anything else. It's not going to fill the room with grating, annoying, loud sort of noise, but yeah, you'll hear it sizzle and hiss is the best way to put it. That boiling water analogy I often use for these very thin Ultrabooks when the fans are going hard. If you're doing everyday productivity work or you're streaming some video, then you don't even hear the fans. But if you are doing things like video editing or compiling a very large program, that sort of thing, the fans certainly will come on and you will hear that. The keyboard on this is actually surprisingly good. I say surprisingly because it is such a thin laptop. No weird Dell maglev keyboard going on here or MacBook Pro barely moving kind of keys. It's short travel, but not super short. And the keys feel really crisp and firm with good return. So it's just a very nice typing experience. The trackpad is a Microsoft Precision trackpad, no complaints there. And you have a fingerprint scanner on the keyboard deck. No Windows Hello camera at this price range. Battery life? Well, it's thin, it's light. They have a 42 watt-hour battery in there, which is at the low end of what we like to see for a 13.3-inch Ultrabook. Not unheard of, but you get the idea. The Envy beats it by about 10 watt-hours, so there's that. Yay, HP for that moment. It has a 65-watt fast charger, so it does at least charge very quickly. But typically for productivity work with the brightness set at 150 nits and streaming some video, doing a couple of Photoshop, photo edits, that sort of thing, it's about a 6.5-hour laptop. So we're not talking Dell XPS 13 full HD level of, wow, I can go 9 or 10 hours with this laptop. Of course, the XPS 13 typically costs more than this too. It's pretty easy to get inside here. 9 Torx T5 screws, those teeny tiny little screws. Unscrew them and then you pry off from the back. It's not hard to do. Metal, albeit thin, and this is what it looks like on the inside. So here we have a fairly large fan, actually a fan housing for an Ultrabook, and a very big heatsink area. It covers not just our integrated CPU/GPU right here, but a couple of other components, VRMs, that sort of thing. So well done there. There is no upgradable RAM. RAM is soldered on board here, so you can't upgrade it yourself. And here's our Wi-Fi card, which again, surprisingly, is a Realtek Wi-Fi card instead of the Intel 9560 AC that we usually see with Intel Whiskey Lake CPUs. There it is. 2 good-sized speakers. No wonder it has pretty good audio. Obviously, our battery right here taking up most of the space, as is typical for Ultrabooks. And our M.2 SSD socket is there. We have the fast Samsung PM981 in here. It's an NVMe SSD. And as you saw from the benchmarks, it's a fast little bugger. So that's the Lenovo IdeaPad 730S or Yoga 730S, depending on where you live. And certainly it's a classy chassis for well under $1,000. Very thin, very light, nice build quality. I like the keyboard. I love the display on this. I wish it had touch, but for those of you who don't want touch, it's here for you. The only thing you could really fault this on is the battery life, which is just okay. Still, good job from Lenovo. I'm Lisa from MobileTechReview. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.